Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris with the West Monroe West Ouachita Chamber, and we are so proud this morning to have special guest speakers for our next in our series of Small Business Academy. We know from our recent job fairs that talent and recruiting is more than a key issue. It is the issue on people's minds in human resources and throughout our business community. We were so fortunate to make a connection with these fine folks at Gallagher to talk about this exact topic. We are recording this and we will share with our membership later, but I want to just mention that this is a rotating series of topics. Each month we try to tackle something new, and we welcome anyone to join at any time. So without anything more, I just want to introduce our speakers and let them take it away.
Absolutely. So good morning and thank you, Chris. We are very excited to participate in the West Monroe West Ouachita Chamber of Commerce's Small Business Academy. Our topic today is Talent Wars, retaining and attracting the right talent in today's competitive wage environment. So we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Tammy Rowland Tharp, and I'm a local girl. I live in West Monroe, right off of Arkansas. I graduated from West Monroe High School, go Rebels. I'm also a proud graduate of ULM with a Bachelor of Business Administration in their Risk Management and Insurance program. I reside, as I said, in West Monroe with my husband and 4 children. My husband is the head football coach at Darbone Woods, go Wolves. We have a senior and a sophomore at ULM, and our youngest is a junior at West Monroe High School. My background is I joined Gallagher in April of 2018. Prior to joining Gallagher, I was with Blue Cross and Blue Shield for 10 years in various roles. I am based, my office is on Tower Drive in Monroe, and we have a team of 42 that address all manners of risk. I lead a consulting team that guides my clients through all aspects of self-funded, captive arrangements, fully insured, executive benefits, retirement plans, anything that falls under HR, the HR umbrella. We work to deliver really effective, sustainable workforce strategies to optimize one of our clients' largest expenses, and that's healthcare benefits, which is my specialty. Joining me today is my colleague, Summer Mason.
Thanks, Tammy. So my name is Summer Mason. I am a senior HR consultant with Gallagher. I actually just celebrated my 5-year anniversary on Monday with Gallagher. And I am based out of Baton Rouge, and so I'm not too far away. Actually went to Louisiana Tech, so lived in North Louisiana for a while and married a boy from Halton. So I am there often as well, and very familiar with the area in North Louisiana. Prior to Gallagher, I was actually on the total rewards leadership side for employers of mid to large size, and actually started out in the late 90s as a compensation analyst. Worked in Houston for 8 years and then moved back to South Louisiana, where I'm originally from. And in my role, I work with Tammy and her team as there are needs that come up around HR and compensation. I am that resource. I'm the boots on the ground that can help with those day-to-day issues. And we have over 200 consultants throughout the U.S. that specialize in various areas of subject matter expertise, such as compensation, HR compliance, engagement surveys, executive search, and lots of areas. So excited to be here today and look forward to reviewing more content with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Summer. So before we jump into the content, I wanted to share a little bit more about Gallagher. Gallagher is the world's 3rd largest broker. And as I mentioned earlier, we actually have an office here on Tower Drive. Within the state of Louisiana, we have the largest book of clients and the most leverage of any consulting house. We negotiate with carriers on behalf of our clients. Globally, we have over 850 offices in more than 150 countries. We are a company of professionals that live in your community, and we focus on ethical conduct and social responsibility. lending to the only insurance brokerage that we literally earned the world's most ethical company by the Ethispheres Institute, which gauges that on a global basis. Now that we've reviewed who Gallagher is, let's jump into the agenda today. So today we're going to be exploring how to avoid losing your top talent due to the influx of recruitment from other organizations. Today, we'll spend time on learning how to first clearly define the employee role and candidate profile by understanding the various generations in the workforce. And then we will discuss the need to offer transparent and balanced rewards, followed by how to create a strong reputation for workplace culture.
All right. Well, thanks, Tammy. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the content. Before I do, though, I wanted to share, we're going to take a couple quick polls in the presentation. So have your phones ready. I will have a QR code that you can scan and respond, and we'll show the results. So that's coming up in the presentation. So wanted to give you just a heads up that be looking out for that. And I'd like to start off first with a story. I started COVID, hit last year. I started traveling again this past June is really when I started picking up traveling again. And in the first week of July, I went to Jackson, Mississippi for some client meetings. And I've traveled through Jackson often in the past. I'm familiar with the area. I have a daughter that goes to Ole Miss, and so we're there often. She's actually a cheerleader there. So we're often traveling through the Jackson area, either for work or for personal. So I'm familiar with the area. But prior to that, I really hadn't been out much because we've been quarantined or, in our house for, a long time. And so started traveling again, getting out. And that night I was going to a dinner with a colleague, and I went to one of our local favorite restaurants. When we got there, we walked up to the front door. There was a sign on the door that said, "We're closed this week in observance of the July 4th holiday." So we got back in our car. We drove around to our second choice restaurant, and we walked up, same thing. Same thing on the door. It took us 5 restaurants that we stopped at before we found one that was open. And it happened to be a national chain, so it made sense. All the others were local restaurants. And we walked in, we sat down at the table. The manager came up and waited on us. And we mentioned to him, we said, we're so happy to see you open because all these other restaurants were closed. And he explained that the restaurants in the area couldn't find enough staff for the week. So they had to close their doors. And it was 4th of July week. So a lot of people wanted to take off. They were already understaffed. And so we really struggled to find a place to eat. And I was beginning to wonder if I was going to be able to eat that night or I was going to have to eat McDonald's. So it was eye-opening to me. I had talked about this. I've been on conference calls with clients and talking about it. And I'd heard about the challenges from clients, but this was the first time that I experienced it personally. And when I think about that experience, it aligns with exactly what we're hearing in our workforce trends report. Over 70% of the HR respondents ranked attracting and retaining a competitive workforce as their number one priority. I was in a meeting yesterday, same thing. It's still an issue, and it's continuously an issue with clients right now. And it's what we're seeing in the data of our workforce trends report. It's what we're hearing from our clients, and it's what we're experiencing as consumers as well, which is a war on talent. So, but why are we seeing the talent war? What's the reason behind it? Everyone says, help me understand why we're having this. Well, first of all, there is record-breaking numbers of employees that are quitting their jobs in a volatile labor market. And with high unemployment, more jobs are coming available, along with labor shortages in key industries. It creates a challenge for employers. And nearly 4 million people quit their jobs in April, pushing the quits rate to 2.7% of those employed, which is an all-time record high since the metric was first recorded in 2000. The rate was especially elevated in the leisure and hospitality industry. And that's where competition for workers is fierce, and people can leave and go to a job across the street for maybe 25, 50 cents, $1 more an hour. So basically the conditions right now for a mass exodus from the workplace, it's giving employees the confidence for landing better opportunities, which has triggered this war on talent. So let's take a look at the industries that it's impacted the most. Yes, with the talent shortage hitting certain industries the hardest, we see that, we know that. And in particular, we're seeing it in leisure and hospitality. We're also seeing it in professional and business services and healthcare. Those are the ones that are being impacted the most. And in the story that I shared earlier when I was in Jackson, I saw it firsthand when I was there. And I'm sure most everyone on this call has experienced something similar personally or in, your workplace. And it's the experience, of course, was frustrating for me as a consumer, but obviously it's a much greater frustration for the employer as we're going through these challenges with recruiting and retaining talent. But how can employers, how can they address this? What can they do to keep their doors open and avoid losing their top talent? So that's what we're going to focus on today. And for the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to focus on 3 areas to consider when looking at ways to avoid losing talent. We're first going to start with clearly defining the employee roles and candidate profiles. We'll then talk about providing transparent and balanced rewards to employees. And then we will, finally, and most certainly not least, we're going to talk about developing a strong workforce. So, before we jump into, that second and third item I mentioned, let's first take a look at clearly defining the roles of employees and candidate profiles. And this can be done by first understanding your workforce mix, and then by defining the roles within the organization. And it calls for clear communications to candidates and employees. So we're going to talk through how you can provide that to them. So when you're defining roles within your organization, a great first step is to look internal and understand your workforce makeup and the employee life cycles or stages of employees in the workplace. For example, if your organization has a majority of entry-level employees versus pre-retiree, your employee programs very likely would vary greatly. I mean, what they want is very different from an entry-level versus a pre-retiree. And once you understand that mix of the life stages within your organization, it's important to understand the behaviors of those stages to ensure that the programs that you're putting in place at the organization align with the employee needs and expectations. And when considering the mix of your workforce, be sure to understand how it compares to a benchmark. So when we look at how to do that, a good place to start for benchmarking your workforce is by utilizing the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS. So you can see on the screen here, for example, according to the BLS, the average percentage of employees with career stages across industries is about 23% are entry level, about 33% are mid-career, 20% are established, and 24% are pre-retiree. So how does your organization compare to this benchmark? And how does this impact the roles within your organization and the candidates that you consider bringing in? For example, if you're heavy on pre-retirees in your workforce, are you focusing on developing a pipeline of succession to fill those roles once those employees retire or leave the organization? And do you have good position or job descriptions and candidate profiles defined? That way you make sure you have a successful transition of employees into those roles over time. And how do you develop the teams within your organization to establish a good mix of employees to ensure a culture of inclusion across the organization? So considering the mix is a good way to look at your organization and make plans and build a strategy. And comparing to the benchmark of BLS, it's very insightful and helpful when developing your strategy. which again, starting off with clearly defining the roles within the organization is a great place to start. So one of the first roles of management involves the recruitment, hiring, training, retaining of talent within the organization. And it involves looking at qualifications, characteristics, potential contributions, the strengths and weaknesses. All of those things are imperative to look at when you're looking at the candidate. But it's much more than that. It's not limited to just choosing the right people to match the right job. It also involves defining roles and responsibilities, because you can't match a person to a job without knowing exactly what you're looking for. So consciously defining each person's role, their responsibilities, and success criteria within the team can have an instant positive impact. And it ensures, first of all, that management identifies the right people for the job so that they can proceed with hiring the most qualified candidates for the job. It also helps because when everyone knows what they're doing and fully understands their roles and responsibilities and how they contribute to a larger team, the collaboration and sharing amongst teams is more likely to occur, which allows for a successful team. And if management's able to communicate to its teams and team members their responsibility and accountability properly, then they will have a more effective and efficient team that's stronger and more successful, leading to higher productivity and better results for the organization. And then finally, when the employees' responsibilities are clearly defined and they know their role and they're successful in the role, the entire team will benefit from it. And team success is a great way to increase morale. As a team does well, the team's morale goes up, and it builds momentum and fosters productivity amongst the team and the organization. So there's obviously some great benefits to defining roles, but we all know that teamwork makes the dream work. So let's take a look at how to best define those roles within a team. All right, so first of all, understanding your team's goals and objectives is a great way to determine functional roles and responsibilities within an organization. So that's where you want to start, is defining those goals and objectives. And when employees know what they should be working on, and that's apparent to them, they're more productive and they have the ability to produce higher quality content. And when defining the role for an employee, there are 4 core areas that employees need to clearly understand to ensure that they're successful in their role. Now, there's the job description and the position description, which are all the things on the left that you'll see. But the key and the core things that employees need and want to know is, first of all, reporting relationship. So who do I report to? Who reports into me, if anyone? Knowing that structure. Second, responsibilities. What are my day-to-day responsibilities and tasks that I have that I'm going to be held accountable for? What are those? Third, what are my expectations? What is management expecting out of me on a day-to-day basis? And then fourth is, what is my authority? What authority do I have to make decisions within the organization? So those are 4 key things, communicating to employees and candidates that they're going to want to know. But when documenting a role formally to candidates and for employees, a detailed position description or job description should be developed. And these things on the left are things that are typically in a job description. So you want to have a summary, an overall summary of the job, the task or functions. What are those set activities of work performed to produce a specific result? Responsibilities, what's expected of the person, the competencies, which are the abilities and skills, and then experiences, what's the degree of background experience that they need. And of course, education, which is a possession of certain knowledge or schooling attained. And performance management isn't always on a job description, but it's great because it does provide to the employee maybe some of those metrics or targets that will be evaluated through performance management. This isn't always on the job description. It may be part of a separate performance management process, but for their role, it's important that they know it. So if it's not on the job description itself, then having that communication through a formal performance management process and system. And, these are all great and best practice when defining the roles, but if they're not current and accurate, it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. So you want to make sure that they are current and accurate, and it gives employees and candidates the comfort in knowing what's expected of them. But again, only if it's communicated effectively. So in our recent 2020 benefits strategy and benchmarking survey that we did last year, and results were released towards the end of last year, we found that only 18% of employers have a comprehensive communication strategy in place. Yet it's the third highest, most desired outcome for a communication strategy. And that's for employees to understand their role and how they communicate it to contribute to the organization's success. And so this shows us that there's a clear disconnect and opportunity for employers to better define and communicate roles to employees and candidates. And this can be done through an impactful communication plan. Communication remains probably more than ever critically important to an organization. You can put in a lot of programs, but if they're not communicated properly, then it can be a waste of time. So what do you want to do when you're communicating? Well, first of all, you want to ensure that the communication is being delivered and is being viewed and received consistently across your audience. So kind of test it out with different audience members and ensure that they are receiving the information as intended consistently. You also want to be sure to have two-way engagement. You want multiple mediums of communication, but ensure that there is a two-way engagement at some point. The best communications are two-way conversations to ensure understanding. Also, be flexible in your approach and consider any legal ramifications, especially around making promises to candidates or employees around opportunities or pay and those type of things. And then ensure transparency. You want to make sure you're transparent and open, but you also want to balance it with empathy when you're communicating. And we know that truth, always wins, but it may be difficult to give certain messages. So making sure you deliver those messages with transparency, but showing empathy in the meantime. And then finally, remember the old adage of tell them once, tell them again, and then tell them again. In fact, we know that long-standing research in advertising has showed that it takes 3 to 7 impressions before a message registers. So if you deliver something to an employee 3 times, it may be a waste of time, but if you deliver it to them 7, 8, 9, 10 times, they're more likely to retain it. I know it's frustrating at times to tell people something over and over, but there's so much noise out there right now through social media, employer communications, just everything. It's just a lot. And so it takes a lot of touches for people to retain information. So, regardless whether best approaches are used or not, anxious employees will invent their own stories in the absence of real information. So it's imperative to have open and honest communication, not only around the roles and expectations, which we just discussed, but also around the topic of their total rewards package. All right, so we've covered the importance of clearly defining the roles. So now we want to, take a look at making sure that we provide transparent and balanced rewards to employees. And in an environment that's ever changing, we can do this first by considering the work from home programs, and then also considering the changing environment of compensation programs. So when looking at your total rewards package, there's many things to consider in the mix outside of your traditional compensation and benefits. Historically, base pay, medical plans, those type of things have been your traditional approach to attracting and retaining talent. But with the pandemic, employers have shifted their focus more towards recognition, development, work-life balance, those types of things, working from home. Not to say that comp and benefits aren't important, but they've become a minimum to compete, and just kind of drifting that focus to other things such as work from home programs and the needs for employers to establish agile work environments for employees, along with considering creative ways to evolve those traditional practices in compensation. And so we'll talk about some of those. So with the impact of the pandemic over the last, 18, 19 months, there's been a shift to new priorities that are shaping the future. And the days of posting jobs, interviewing in person, welcoming new hires to the office, that one size fits all onboarding program, it's no longer sufficient. In the past, everything revolved around work at the office, and employees adjusted their personal lives to accommodate their work schedules. But now it's the opposite, where we're seeing employees are adjusting their work to accommodate their personal lives. And the future of work, it's evolved. The organizational culture and priorities have moved to one of that of agility and well-being and flexibility. In fact, 15% of employers reported an improvement in the level of emotional well-being most recently. Work at home and flex scheduling policies could be the reasons for the uptick in the workforce civility and kindness that was noted by about half of the employers that participated in our pulse survey. And although, these are some positive impacts to work from home and flex scheduling, as you all know, it can be very difficult for employers and HR to establish and maintain a strong culture within the organization remotely. So now I would like to take a poll. So as you all mentioned, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, to pull your phones out. If you pull out your cell phone and you pull up the camera and you scan and you click on it, it will pull up the question on your phone. So, what percentage of your workforce is remote? No employees are remote, less than 25% are remote, 25 to 49, 50 to 75, or 75 plus are remote. So if you all could answer, I'm going to give you just a minute to do this because once I click on it, it'll open up the results. So I want to give you all just a minute to scan it. So it'll be interesting to see, once we started with COVID, everyone moved to remote. And over the past 6-8 months, we've slowly been coming back, although some jobs are still remote. Mine is remote, will likely stay remote. And some employers are looking at, the ability to cut back on brick and mortar cost or offices and doing hoteling and sharing. And so that's what we're doing at Gallagher. And now when I'm doing presentations, I do them at home virtually through Zoom and those types of things. But I do go out and meet in person as well. So I'm kind of a hybrid, I guess you would say. All right, we're going to go ahead and see the results. So give me a moment for it to load.
I love these interactive QR codes. I love it.
So let me see. It likely came up behind the screen.
And so the attendees know we really like our conversations to be interactive. So we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this if we do have the time, but we'll also share this deck with Chris for distribution, and our contact information is on it should you care to reach out.
Yep, and for some reason it's not coming up. I see it. You know what it is? It's on one of this other screen. Well, shoot. Let me see. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to get out of the presentation. Just a moment.
That's okay. I want to see the results. There has been a consistency from our clients and our prospects of what we've seen. We ourselves have offered a really flexible environment for our employees. As long as they hit their work goals and the work is done, we have a lot more flexibility post-COVID than probably we did pre-COVID with our attendance at brick and mortar offices. In fact, while Summer's pulling that up, I'll share with you that our office in Monroe on Tower has grown so much. We've actually outgrown our building, and I am hoteling there, meaning I'm sharing an office. And I have to make an appointment to do that because there are 3 people per office. So hopefully we will be building an addition to that office, so I won't have to do that in the future.
Okay, so I'm having some technical issues, Tammy. For some reason, it is not loading. I can see it in another window that will not pop up. So it's like, I don't know.
No
It's
worry.
not opening.
Why don't you, if you can see the results, Summer, why don't you just share them with us?
Well, it's odd. It's showing, it's saying most everyone has selected that first option. So there's, I think that says 6. So it, yeah, so most everyone has selected that first option there. So,
Okay.
I am so sorry. No employees are remote. So most everyone are saying no employees are remote. And what I'll do after, I have 3 screens, and for some reason, one of my screens is not working, and that's the one that the window is on. So I can't show it, but I will share out the results after.
Okay. Thanks, Summer. No problem.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me go back to sharing here. All right. Can you see my screen again?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, so, moving on, and you see most of you have responded that that you don't have remote workers at home. One of the things that we also want to look at is compensation, and around that is variable pay. So, right now where we're looking at the challenges with the talent wars and all, there are multiple things that employers can do to look at, making some changes in their programs. Remote work is one, but also variable pay is one that has become more prevalent. And there are many benefits to variable pay, especially during such volatile times. Variable comp directly rewards employees based on their performance, incenting them to achieve their highest potential. And when employers provide this opportunity, they support both the career and financial well-being of their workforce. Variable pay links comp to organizational success, and it avoids long-term cost by not accruing more to the base pay. So there's a shared upside for employees to increase their income beyond base salary. And the employer who benefits, also benefit from having having contributions to their organization that are outside maybe those traditional day-to-day operations. So it's an alternative to salary increases, variable pay such as annual bonuses. It can save money and service and investment in the future success. And its revenue streams and budgets will be unpredictable for 2021 and 2022. And for this reason, many employers are pausing the across-the-board salary increases. However, the data shows more employers are leaning into variable pay models because it allows them to provide employees with pay increases based upon performance. And according to our salary planning survey, we found that 40% of respondents use variable pay, and 73% don't anticipate changing their variable pay budgets for 2021. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see more employers incorporate variable pay this year because of the flexibility it offers without a long-term cost impact to the organization. So real quick, some other things to consider, don't forget about pay equity. It's very important that you look at that. And among the surveyed organizations that we surveyed, 65% expect to make pay changes. They made pay changes in 2020 and 2021 to address pay equity issues, making pay more equivalent for women and minorities based upon factors such as position, tenure, education, and experience. And it's about the same number that we see moving forward as far as organizations anticipating making pay equity adjustments. So don't forget about that. Also, promotional schedules. Many organizations are on an annual or semi-annual promotional schedule, and now's the time to ask why. Why schedule promotions at a specific time or at all? why not use this opportunity to change the program if changes are needed? So now's a perfect time to do that and get out of the habit of feeding that habit of entitlement. So take a look at those and see if now's the time to change that. And when it comes to finding and retaining the right talent, it requires a shift in approach, and understand who you need and remain vigilant about hiring to that set of criteria. And it starts with, again, updating the job skills and competencies for your jobs. And, in the past, specific experience may have been required, for example, for a position. But maybe now we focus on diversity of background or opinion, or the ability to pivot and think creatively. So thinking about more of those competencies than skills. And then once you've updated those descriptions, be sure to hire and promote employees according to the new competencies. And it can be done by assessing your current leaders, looking at succession of candidates, creating a diverse candidate pool, finding ways to foster talent internally within the organization. So there's, a lot of ways that you can do that. And then finally, design and deploy incentive programs, considering the evolution of compensation strategies we've just discussed, such as variable pay programs. But the goal here is to create the right programs that will retain and motivate the kind of employees you want to establish a strong workplace culture.
Absolutely. So Summer, that was all extremely pertinent. Culture, it's about developing a culture, but it really is imperative to develop a strong workplace culture by defining a strategy that promotes a healthy and safe environment for inclusion and belonging. So Summer, on the next slide, our world today. This slide represents what is on the minds of our organization, our leaders, and our employees. As a leader, there are questions that I ask myself in regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, both Summer and I are on an internal think tank for DE&I for our Gallagher Gulf states, which includes Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And some of the questions that have come up in our conversations are we doing everything we can to support a respectful workplace? Is there clarity around the behaviors that are expected and the behaviors that will not be tolerated? Are the leaders modeling the positive behaviors? And what does accountability look like within our organization? If you're not sure where to start, we can help with this. A good place to start is by asking yourself, why should you care? What is the value to an organization for instilling the importance of a respectful workplace? Well, first of all, a respectful workplace creates a foundation for enabling positive emotions. Positivity in the workplace enhances both our physical health and our sense of connection to others. Ultimately, it enhances trust and it builds a strong culture. According to the Harvard Business Review, individuals in a high trust organization experience 74% less stress, 106% more energy, 50% more in productivity, 13% less sick days, 76% more engagement, 29 higher life satisfaction, and 40% less burnout. Chris, these statistics remind me of the conversation that you and I had just before we went live, and how you were in a think tank with younger new graduates from ULM and what they expect out of a long-term employment. So additionally, the Harvard Business Review also said that increased interpersonal relationships help build resiliency, which reduces the potential for burnout and attrition. From the slide, as you can see, there's clearly a value to having a respectful workplace within your organization. So all of this evolves into personal well-being. That's another very important consideration for establishing a culture of DEI and respect. It's about your personal well-being. Getting to organizational well-being isn't possible without employees who are well. It's a logical step, isn't it?
Mhm.
Typically, we use the term well when we relate it to physical health, but total well-being is much more complex than that. It's understanding that employees come to work as a whole person, and whatever is going on with them physically, emotionally, and financially, any one of these components can impact their well-being, their productivity, and their commitment to your organization. So while all the dimensions are important and connect to each other, it's actually career well-being that has the most significant impact on overall quality of life. You know, my dad knew this because he would say to me, "You're going to spend most of your time at work. So, young lady, be sure you choose a career that you can stay with and grow in." And I won't even tell you how many years ago that was, but how valued your employees feel and the relationships that they have with their manager and their colleagues matter, feeling that their opinions matter and that they're being heard, being recognized as for their efforts, as Summer clearly defined earlier. You know, considering all of this, we think about culture and a respectful workplace. The impact of disrespect in a workplace can significantly erode both your employee engagement, your personal well-being, and your ability to attract and retain. Characteristics of a respectful workforce are a safe place of employment where employees are valued, recognized, and treated fairly without bias, where there is open communication, it's encouraged without fear of repercussion, and accountability is established. How is this increasingly important right now? Well, according to a recent Gallup research, when asked to consider the recent impact of COVID, this is a wow statistic for me. Less than half of the employees, 45%, strongly agreed that their organization cares about their overall well-being. This means that there's some opportunity for improvement for employers when it comes to overall employee well-being. And it can be addressed by starting with recognizing the importance of organizational well-being, which is comprised basically of three areas. The first is physical and emotional well-being. Second, financial well-being. And thirdly, career well-being. It's also about understanding that getting to positive organizational outcomes requires an understanding of all of the variables that may impact those outcomes and how they connect. It begins with each person understanding the organization's culture, leadership messages, and leader behaviors, because all of these components alone can significantly influence the behaviors of employees, which in turn influences your organizational risk and ultimately outcomes for the employees, the organization, and the customers that they serve. Someone who I think does this, understands this so well, is Chick-fil-A. Does anyone drive out of Chick-fil-A not happy and feel like they've been served courteously? I never do. Leadership confidence has become increasingly important during COVID as employees are stressed out about the virus, about their finances, about job security, and about managing family obligations. In fact, two of my account managers have very young children at home. And when the schools and the daycares closed, they were in an incredibly awkward position with two children under 4 while they're trying to work from home and perform their jobs. So employees look to us to help lead their organization through the crisis, but into a positive recovery. Leaders are also setting the cultural tone and expectations around respect and inclusion within your organization through your messages. through how you conduct yourself. So where do we start? Well, we start with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of us have started in the middle, right? Through our policies, practices, and training, we have basically focused on building awareness. But awareness isn't enough to establish understanding and trust, and the sustainability of change requires dialogue and action. It's not to say that starting in the middle isn't a good first step, but understanding what is needed and how to sustain your efforts requires the elements on the left and the right too. So assessing and understanding, engaging and sustaining the culture is important as well. As an example, we are seeing leaders further support their organizational efforts in DEI by forming work groups like we did that are diverse in both gender, race, sexual orientation, age, experiences, and roles. And all of that is needed to ensure that the voice of the employees are heard. It's important to have a diverse workforce to ensure the outcome is impactful. So once you've thought through that roadmap and it's in place, there are multiple strategies organizations can use when considering recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce. Gallagher has a diverse workforce development survey where we can ask employers what they're doing in 2021 to ensure that they're recruiting a diverse workforce. And we have found that 51% disclose salary ranges in job postings. This gives candidates a comfort that there will be a fair and equitable pay practice. 49% diversified hiring panels to ensure that there was a diversity of thought and opinion when selecting candidates. Almost 30% asked questions tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion during the interviews to display the importance to interviewees along with assessing their opinions on the subject. 44% posted job descriptions with inclusive language, again, to display the value within the organization and to attract diverse candidates. 38% are adding images in recruitment materials to reflect diversity. We think that through these responses, you will see employers moving the needle to a culture of respect, trust, and inclusion. So in conclusion, we've discussed a great deal today on ways to avoid losing top talent during this time of the talent wars. There is a lot to consider. And as a reminder, the key areas to focus on are, first, a clearly defined employee role and candidate profiles. Second, offer transparent and balanced rewards to employees. And third, create a strong reputation for workplace culture focused on respect, trust, and inclusion. Thank you for your time today. We can open it up. Yes.
Before we open up for Q&A, I was able, while you were talking, to pull up the results in a different web browser. So let's try this now.
Absolutely.
The other web browser wasn't working for some reason, so I had to log in. Let me maximize this. Can you see the screen?
We can.
Okay, great. So I'm glad I was able to pull it. So yes, 4 said, no employees are working remotely, and then 3 other employers have a remote workforce. So this is what we're seeing in our findings, is about 50% of employers have remote workforce now. So anyway, I wanted to share that. What I'll do as well is plug this content into the slide deck on that QR code page. So whenever we send the presentation to Christopher, it'll have the results in there to share with everyone. So, yep, aligned with our data. So I wanted to share that since I was finally able to get it to load.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Summer. So if any of the attendees are interested in attaining benchmarking data, We have a national benchmarking survey, which actually is one of the largest in the nation. And Chris, what I'll do is I will have our benchmarking team create a custom URL for you. And I'll send it, and you can send it to the Chamber's membership. Now, we do this quite often for associations. One of the ways that I think it will be useful is when you complete it, you can get a data set that is specific to where we live here in West Monroe in Ouachita Parish. And it will be reflective of what others are doing to attract and retain. So I'll get that over to you by the end of the week. There is no cost for the survey. And if you complete it, you get that entire data set. Benchmark is important. It's important because as some of my clients here, I am working on to build benefit patterns, and in conjunction with my colleague Summer, to help them build a plan to stop the employee leakage that they're suffering right now. So, Chris, I'll send that over to you. And if you find it of value, please distribute it to the Chamber's membership. Summer, I know you're driving the presentation. So are there any questions or any feedback that any of the attendees would like to share with us?
Marvis Hicks actually shared a comment, and they're the outreach and education coordinator for the EOC, and they're here for employment discrimination training needs, provided contact information, and also shared that they provide respectful workplace training for management and staff.
That's excellent. Take advantage of that. Excellent.
Thank you, Marvis, for joining. We appreciate that. That's great to know.
Sure. So, Summer, if there's anything else in closing, here at Gallagher, our focus is to help you face your future with confidence by applying custom strategies and solutions to protect your people, your property, and your profits. You'll soon be receiving that email to follow up with today's presentation. Thank you for joining us, and please let us know if we can help. Turning it back over to you, Chris.
Well, thank you so much. That was so informative. And you really piggybacked on something that we had just kind of talked about just this week, which is new graduates and their expectation of employment is totally different. I still feel like I'm young, but something happened when I crossed 40. There's a big disconnect. So when we were sitting with those marketing students and having this conversation, I was quite shocked that no longer is their geography a boundary. They are motivated by the job environment, by these kind of workplace relationships, and then the geography is secondary. So they have no inhibitions to moving, where I think that's a pretty big paradigm shift, especially for Northeast Louisiana, to have that relationship. People are genuinely looking to find these workplaces that build their skills, invest, make them feel heard, more importantly, and bring a diversity. That diversity component is not just a compliance issue, right? It is literally a quality of workplace. So thank you so much. And we will pass this information along, and thank everyone for participating today. We look forward to a future partnership with Gallagher.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.